this differently. I don't like standing behind a podium. I'd rather my body language tell you the story as much as the podium does. I know we've got a couple preachers and pastors in the room. No offense if you stand behind a podium. Tonight is really unique to Woodland Park School District. And so we're spending time just having conversation. And it's something that I've done in my past when I'm both working with our unions and when I'm working with other schools. It's really important for us to come together and to have a dialogue. So the little white card, the question and answer, and I feel like this is really loud, sorry. It's important for us to answer the questions that are in the room. And I think we do that. Lindsay is doing a great job as a public information officer, getting the word out, trying to tell the story about what's going on. Sometimes things get going too fast. I'll own that. I think this is one of those processes that got going too fast. And so we sat down as an executive leadership team and said, all right, let's slow down and let's have the conversation with the community, because it felt like that was really missing. And then the goal of that conversation tonight is to address specific topics and to address maybe some discussion items that are, how would you say, rumors? I don't like rumors. Like, I'd rather us have the real conversation about what is and what is not. And then there are things tonight that are not part of this discussion. And so, and I'll address those in just a minute. But really looking at the facility, where we started this stage with this discussion was when the Board of Education approved Merritt as a charter school. So Merritt is approved as a charter school. We're not going to be spending time tonight discussing Merritt being approved as a charter. Should they be approved? Should they not be approved? They're already approved as a charter school. Okay? When the board entered into that vote and voted that Merritt into the charter school, it shifted us into the facility discussion. Now, I had already started that discussion back in the fall. We had looked, and actually the previous board hired me in the discussion, was what are we going to do with our facilities over the next 10 years? I had previously done some facilities master plan work, looking into facilities across the school district and just trying to figure out what is best and what is the best use for our facilities. So that process started back in October. October, November, December. When was your first meeting-ish with the facilities master planning? October, right. So we've been working on this in the direction, in my directive to Cooperative Strategies is by the end of this year, we will have a 7, 8, 10-year plan on our facilities, on all of our facilities. Every one of them, and that's part of the community discussion globally. In the mix of all of that came the approval of a charter school and the voting in of a new board. New board comes in, new board approves the charter school and says we want to provide a house, part of our space, for that charter school. That's where we are today. That space discussion is the discussion of where is the best place for Merritt to go in the district. And so the team is going to spend some time explaining that, explaining why here over somewhere else. I'll give you the 80,000 foot view. When we started hearing discussions in the community about Merritt being in one of the elementary schools, for me, that was not the right place in just my experience. It wasn't the right place for a lot of reasons. It wasn't the right place for growth. It wasn't the right place because it would displace the teachers of Columbine. It wasn't something that I was interested in laying off staff to bring another school in. So this discussion tonight is focused on the middle school. We're not, if we have questions about comparing and contrasting, well, can't Merritt go into Columbine? And are we going to compare and contrast? Why not Columbine? We're not here to have that discussion tonight. We're here to explain what is going on in this environment because honestly, the facilities team has come back and said this is a doable situation, this is a viable situation. So some of the other things that were questions that were sent in are, and we'll address, commingling and connecting kids to, one set of kids to the other kids, and discipline structures and transportation and food and building and not building stuff. Sorry, stuff's not the technical word. Walls and furnitures, fixtures, and equipment. Some of the other things that are not going to be a part of this discussion tonight is what happens if Merritt is not successful. Right? We're not going to get into the whys or the maybes. Those are, I don't know if Merritt's going to be successful or not. I don't really know what that would look like next year or the year after, the following year. We are going to spend some time talking about the contract that's right in the middle of the process of being written between Merit and the district. We're going to spend a little bit of time on that. Anything else that I'm forgetting as far as kind of framing? Our goal here is to try to communicate where we're headed, or where we think we're headed, and then take feedback, options, questions. When we met with teachers, we probably had an hour and a half, 60 questions, and there's some great questions, and redirected us. And some of the ideas that we were thinking of as a district, we're not addressing teacher concerns. And so we've revamped, and we've kind of looked at some things and tried to provide options so that those teachers that express that are not kind of impacted by that. So this is also an opportunity for our board to be a part of their listening and the listening process. So we have 4 members here. Mr. Austin's out of state, and did Sue come in? I didn't see her come in. If she comes in, I'll privately say hello. So it's also a chance for our board to hear and listen kind of your questions, and we're going to dialogue back and forth on that. All right. Tina, you want to rock and roll on the next? All right.
So here's our format as we start to move through the presentation. So you're going to hear an overview from our executive team. We're going to talk about the proposal specifically, so we're going to put a map up there and show you what it looks like and what's part of each wing, what's part of each school. We're going to talk about some programming considerations. So Yvonne Goings, our principal at the middle school, is going to talk about some of the programming considerations and concerns. We're going to talk about facility considerations with Miles Tuttle, and we're going to talk about budget considerations with Brian Gustafson. So you're going to hear from our executive team. We did have the form out where we solicited questions. We got about 55 questions submitted by the community. So in planning for this evening, we used those questions to guide the things that we would go over. If additional questions came up, what we've done is we've provided for you a note card to jot down those questions, and we have our little team over here that's going to come around. Even if you hold, I think we're far enough apart, you could hold that up and they'll hustle on over and collect those from you, and throughout the presentation they'll start kind of collating those questions so that we can ask them in a succinct way. And when we get to the end, that table will kind of give us here's a question we're hearing from that we've gathered from the audience. So as we go through, you can put those questions down, jot them down, and we'll answer those. We will also be putting a FAQ, charter school FAQ, onto our website by this Friday. And so that will have general chartering questions, because a lot of questions that were solicited from the form were about just chartering. How do charter schools work? How does funding work? Those are not the focus tonight. So those will be things that we'll put on the website with answers to those questions. If we don't answer a question that came in or comes to the table tonight, we will be adding that to our FAQ, as well as things that we're addressing tonight for the people here. We will add that to our FAQ on the website. So our hope is that we can get all of those in a place where the community can go and view those. So that's kind of our structure for tonight. So I am going to kick us off right here with the big question of the map. What does it look like? That's the question that's come up. And so that you know, this communication started with the middle school. So it was a case of sitting with the middle school and saying, okay, let's look at your programming, let's look at some potentials for your space. So if you look at this map, we are here in the Commons. This is kind of the parking lot and the parking lot over here. And this is a map of the middle school. So what you see in yellow here is the proposed wing that would be designated for Merit Academy, and the proposed wing that would be designated for Woodland Park Middle School. So let's talk a little bit about what this looks like. These are two separate schools. So as we launch this, these two schools would operate completely separately. There would be separate entrances. This is the main entrance for the middle school. If you walk down our back sidewalk, we have an entrance here that is also key carded. That would be the main entrance for Merit. We would add what we've kind of called the crash doors. So the big doors that you can put in our hallway here and in our hallway here. Due to fire code, we can't build walls. So we would build crash doors that would have, if we felt like it was important, would have kind of a system that would let us know if someone came through those doors. So we would build those doors here and here, which would not detract from the facility, because we have those kind of doors in different places throughout the middle school. So these would be separate. We would offset the start and end times of these two schools so that we did not have more traffic. So knowing that we have a flow-through lane here and a flow-through lane here for the middle school, we would offset those start and end times. And we would offset the times that our students are outdoors, like recess and things like that. So times when the two schools would be using more of the common areas outside or flow-through lanes. So these two schools would operate separately. So physically separated, operate separately, so the bell system would work for this building and for this building. So we have the ability to separate those, separate the public announcement systems so that they are separate buildings. We would have no jointly utilized space during the school day. We would have no students, staff, or stakeholders cross between these schools. If someone came from one school to the other, they would enter like all other community members through our front doors, through our security on both sides of the school. Both sides of the school would have secure entrances using our Raptor system or a similar system to guarantee safety for our students. And we would coordinate between the two schools and the administration. We would coordinate safety and security plans, and we would have to run fire drills, safety drills together. So that's similar, like we're at central office, and when the high school has a fire drill, we go out too. So they let us know, Tuesday we're having a fire drill, so we know in our meetings we'd have to go out. So we would have to coordinate between the two schools things like safety drills and fire drills, which are required by law. If you look at the two wings, so let's start here. I'm going to give a general overview of what's in the wings. So if you look at the Merit wing, this is a total of 2 key card entrance. There's a key card entrance here and one here that allows us to enter securely. There are 22 classrooms here. So 22 classrooms, which include computer labs. So that is the nice thing about a secondary school. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 classrooms that are outfitted as computer labs. So sinks, gas, but all the things that go in computer labs. Science labs. My bad, not computer, science labs. So 4 science labs, as well as storage for those science labs for things like chemicals that have to be stored securely. We also have a computer lab, that's where I started. We have a computer lab here with 30 drops for computers. So that's set up as a computer lab in that wing. And we have 2 classrooms that have what we call timeout spaces. So 2 classrooms with timeout spaces in those classrooms. This wing also includes the auxiliary gym, which has an entrance right here. So it can be accessed from this wing. So the auxiliary gym, which has a storage closet. We have 2 sets of restrooms, one here and here, and one down here and here, that are part of that wing. We have 3 offices, or what you might call a teacher's lounge or a conference room. So we have an office here, an office here, and an office here in this space. We have student lockers throughout this. It's actually if you look at the middle school, it's the newest part of the middle school, which is all of like 10 years old. So newest part of the middle school. We have a security camera system within this wing. We have both wired and Wi-Fi internet connection within this wing and switches for those. We have LCD projectors in each of these classrooms. We have phones, and we would have parking designated at the top of this lot for the school. And if you walk directly out behind the middle school, you'll see an area here that used to house a portable. The portable's been taken, but the area is flattened out, so it could be used as a playground space or an outdoor classroom space that could be built upon. So this is kind of a summary of the Merit Wing. If we switch to the middle school portion, the middle school portion has classrooms here. When we look at programming, we have enough classrooms here for 6 teachers per grade level. We currently have 5 teachers, plus right now we allocate space for the special ed teacher and pairs that work with the grade level. So it continues to provide that space for the middle school. We have allocated a space here next to the library and next to the art room that Yvonne will talk about, that we're super excited, called a STEM lab, which is a relocation of our computer lab down here to next to our art area so that we can get those 2 teachers collaborating. We also have space allocated within this block for our special ed classrooms that would be moving from this wing. So currently we have some center-based programs for special education that are down here. We would move those down into this area, and we would construct the timeout spaces and spaces need for those unique accommodations with input from those families that have students in those center-based programs. We would reallocate our recycling center, and Yvonne will talk about some of the exciting program that'll come from reallocating our recycling center. We would add a curtain in our main gym. If you've seen those curtains that will drop down to allow for 2 spaces within the main gym, because we have 2 PE teachers that often are doing different activities. So you don't want archery going on while volleyball's going on. It could be fun. We currently have kind of 3 areas that staff use as staff lounges. So we would repurpose where our mailroom is to create a dedicated staff lounge for our teachers. The middle school would continue to have their enrichment spaces in the commons here. So that would continue to be space used by the middle school, as well as their playground area, which is out here, and their blacktop area that's out here. Their parking would be the bottom part of kind of that lot that's over here, as well as the front of the school. So that's kind of an overview of the 2 wings. And when we look at this overview, it houses what we currently have in each of the 2 schools. It houses the students that we currently have, and it allows room for growth over the next 2 to 3 years as we continue to work with our master's facility plan, which will provide for us past those 2 to 3 years what we should be looking at with our buildings. So it allows for growth as we continue to go through the process of a master's facility plan that will really provide the recommendations for the future past that time. So this is the big level overview of what's in each wing and what those areas look like. So I'm going to hand the mic to Yvonne Goings, principal at the middle school, and she's going to talk about the programming.
It's okay to clap. It's okay. All right. Let me get my stuff all set up here. So those of you who know me know that I am blatantly honest with things, and I'll tell you, this is not the easiest thing I've ever done in my career. However, I do have complete faith and confidence in my team's leadership and in our staff that we can make this work and we can take care of our kids and our Woodland Park Middle School kids. Your guys' kids will definitely come first, and we can also make sure that our community children are being taken care of as well. So I have complete faith that we can do that. But again, not the easiest thing I've had to do as the leader. So just know, for those of you who don't know me, when you talk to me, you'll get blatant honesty. So first, just to reiterate, our schools are separate schools, and they will be treated as such. We have different philosophies around that, with the common core of we love kids, right? And we want to grow them, and we want them to learn. So we'll have that in common, but as far as sharing space, sharing staff, none of that will be there. First of all, and oh my goodness, the questions that came in were so heartwarming for me. The way you guys were just talking about how much you care about our staff and our students. The questions that came in, like, are you going to lose staff? What about our kids? Are they going to be safe? All of that, so heartwarming to know that you guys feel that way. So first and foremost, there will be no staffing changes as a result of sharing our building, none at all. So we are not losing staff because of this. There was also a question around, well, what about if, staff want to move over there and everything? What I can tell you is that we foster, and I can't take full credit for this because this was here when I came to work here 15 years ago. There is such a positive climate and culture among our staff. We are a family. We love each other. They're all back there right now, like, sometimes we're a dysfunctional family, but we are a family, and we love each other, we care about each other. Right now, and some of them are back there, we have staff members that drive through 3 different districts that pay a lot more than we do, and they choose to come here because of the way they feel, because of the culture we have built together with our families, with leadership, with our entire team that's here. We care about each other, and we build that climate and that culture. We have teachers that have gone to other districts, have moved to other states, have gone on different adventures, and 2 or 3 years later they call and they say, hey, do you have any openings? Because I'd really like to come back. Okay, so we have a few of those teachers that are here as well, and some different staff members. So our staff members love it here, and we're going to continue to have them love it here because we care about them just as much as we care about the kids. Again, we are a family. I have to say the staff has gotten each other through some very difficult things, and when Dr. Neal talked about how we present to our staff first, I was so nervous. And they just sat there, they listened, and then they're like, well, hey, what about this? What if we did this instead of that? How can we make that work? And just their care for kids, and their thing of like, you know what? It doesn't matter where we are, we can teach, and we can love kids. So proud of our staff, and that will continue. We definitely honor them there. And just know that no matter what, our staff will continue to challenge our kids to be their very best. We'll inspire them and we'll empower them just like our vision says. And you'll hear me go back to that a few times. So with staffing, we are good. All right, unique grade level needs. Middle school kids are weird. Just that simple. I always joke that they're like toddlers but with hormones, so we never know what they're going to say or do, but they act a lot like that, right? They want their independence, but they also want to look behind them and make sure that if they fall, there's somebody there to pick them up. So we know that about our kids. So as Tina talked about a little bit, we do have 6 classrooms per grade level that we'll have space for, so we could definitely accommodate any growth that may come. And not be completely overcrowded. We've had the luxury the past few years of having some additional space. So really being able to spread out and have a science room where we do experiments here and lab reports here. And that's been super nice. And we can still do the same work, but in a little bit tighter space. So every year when we start, we look at what are our needs. How many teachers do we have? What are they qualified in? What kids do we have? What new programming do we have coming in place? All of that good stuff. And then we were like, okay, what's the best makeup? And probably my staff could say, like, every year we move rooms. Every single year. One year we had a huge moving party, like grilled burgers and everything at lunch, because I think everybody in the building moved rooms. So it's something that we do, and we'll get there. But we base that on what do our kids need. All right, so in 6th grade, as the kids go through, we do this gradual release of responsibility to the kids. And we know that when they come in 6th grade, they're coming in from at least 3 elementary schools. We get kids from Lake George also, from Cripple Creek, from different countries, from Kuwait, say, you know, little places like that. And they come in and we're like, hey guys, the first thing we're going to do is build relationships. Because now you guys are all Panthers. Hey, we'll have the space to do that, and we'll make sure as we go through and we design spaces that the kids in 6th grade still have the place to do that, and that the teachers have the place that they can do that. These kids in 6th grade, they need time to explore their surroundings with guidance, because I don't know what it is, but middle school kids have to run and jump and hit everything. So we've tried to retrain them, they just do it. You guys see it at home. I see some of the parents going, yeah, no. Hey, so they'll still have that. And we're really going to work on having, and I'll get to that later. They need to know that they have a team of adults that are coming in, because they've gone through, most of them, from preschool all the way up through 5th grade with the same kids. And definitely kindergarten through 5th grade with the same teachers that they see day after day. And they come in here and there's a high ceiling and wider hallways and more kids. And it's overwhelming to be a 6th grader anyway. And so we're gonna make sure that we still hold true to our values, and we're gonna take care of them. Hey, we can look at alternate passing periods. We can redesign our day to make sure that they have the space that they need to figure out, when do you get to try and jump the little thing between the commons area and the activities hallway. They can't touch it in 6th grade, but by 8th grade they can. You know, so we will take the time to make sure that they still have that and they have the space to do that. One of the great things that we're super excited about, 6th graders need to feel like they belong. And this year, thanks to Miss Street, we got to add 6th graders to most of our sports this year. And next year, they will be part of all of our competitive sports, as well as our forensics team, and can audition for all of our jazz bands, Odyssey choirs, all of that. So we get to have our 6th graders truly be part of our community, not just during the school day, but also after school for activities. So Mrs. Street, yeah, give it up for Miss Street, because that was huge. All right, also with 6th graders, though, they need to know they have very clear boundaries. And I don't know, my kids are grown now. I haven't watched Disney in a long time, but I know like sometimes on the Disney Channel or whatever they watch now, I don't know, YouTube, I don't know. They show these schools as these like wild, crazy places. They're not. At least mine's not. Ours here, the kids are really good. If we're like, hey, you know what, this is your boundary and here's why, 98% of them are like, okay, and they do it. And then 2% don't, and then we get to have conversations and they figure it out. But really, our kids are good. So it's not this crazy place where paper airplanes are flying all over the place, unless we're studying that in science. And they're good. And I believe that of all of our kids. They're more good than bad. So they'll learn their boundaries and they'll do fine. 7th grade. Raise your hand if you have a 7th grade student right now. 7th grade. Holy moly. I remember telling my daughter in 7th grade, one of us may not make it through this year, sweetie. So 7th grade kids are hard. It's where they hit puberty, right? Most of them, and because of that, their brains shut down and their bodies take off. So we know we have to provide space for that. This is the year where they really forget thinking about everything else around them and only think about themselves. We know when we design this, there's going to have to be space for that. We know that we're going to have times where we guide them in how do you talk to other people? How do you even know that there's somebody else around you when you're doing whatever it is you're doing? Okay, one of my favorite stories is when we had a 7th grader who was talking to me. We were walking in the activities hallway and he had an apple. He took a bite of the apple, looked at it, right in front of me, threw the apple against the wall, inside, in the hallway. I went, what are you thinking? And he goes, I don't know. And I said, I believe you. I believe that about you. You don't know right now. So knowing that we have to give them space to help learn and grow, and we will provide that. My 7th grade teachers are cracking up because they're like, yeah, we you know. That was years ago, not current ones. So it was none of your kids, just so you know. 7th grade is where kids fail a lot. They have setbacks. Their best friend is now best friends with somebody else. That boy or girl that they had butterflies in their belly about doesn't even know they exist. And their world is going to end because of that. There's no way they can even make it to the next 5 minutes. So we know our 7th graders need to be close to that counseling center, right? They need to know that they have support there and that the teachers are there to help them. 7th grade parents right now are kind of crying, sorry. Okay, so we know that they grow through that, and right now they're starting to come out of it a little bit and turn into our 8th grade kids, who also still need that team of adults. But with that gradual release, this is where our kids start to gain more independence. And it's so cool to see by the end of 8th grade. I mean, I get these little elementary kids that come in and young adults leave. And so we know that they need space for more independence. They need us to back off a little bit, but still be there for them. So when we're looking at that map, and we haven't said this will be 8th, this will be 7th, this will be 6th, we haven't said that yet. Because we want the teacher input, we want the kid input, we want the parent input. We definitely need to talk with especially our special education parents around that. Like, what does this mean for students with special needs? So we know, though, that we need spaces for 8th grade students where there's still supervision because they aren't great kids, but they need their independence because when they hit high school, man, they're ready to go. And we want them to have those skills to do that. And we know that they don't just magically appear. We know that we have to teach those to them. So when we're looking at space, we're definitely going to do that so we can challenge them to think past themselves to each other, but also to their futures. Okay, because that's really our role as they go through here, is that gradual release to help them get where they are. Okay, all of our kids. We are ready to take all of our kids outside of our walls. This is what's really exciting. Before COVID hit, man, we were primed. We're like, all right, we're ready to build some outdoor classrooms. We've got this in place, we've got this in place, and then COVID hit. And apparently we couldn't even teach outside, right? So we already have some things in place. We had, Miss Stewart had a great friend who donated a ton of wood to us and logs. So we have all, yeah, give up Miss Stewart. She's like, please don't start teaching about that person. So, but we have all of these different things ready to go to establish outdoor classrooms that we can do. When the school was originally built, our little pond down here where all the frogs chirp when we have our fire drills, okay, there's places down there that we can set up classrooms for sciences and social studies. I'm looking at ecosystems and talking about how different creatures interact with each other. So we are ready to roll with some outdoor classrooms because the kids love that. And seriously, nobody wants to be in here when we can be outside, right? Also, another piece that we've been working on really getting in place for about the last 5 years is a service learning program. Our community gives so much to us, and our kids, especially middle school, need to learn how to give back, right? It's one of the reasons why we do our Warm Welcome Wednesday, because again, middle school kids are weird, right? And they don't know how to interact with people. And so when we bring people in from the community who are like, hey, how are you doing? And they're like, what? Oh, hi. And we want to get them out there so the community gets to know how to interact with weird kids, and our kids get to understand how to interact with the community and give back, because we are a small community. We want them to take ownership of their environment, not just here at school, but the environment, this beautiful environment that they're so lucky to grow up in. And then one thing that we've been planning, again, before COVID, we were ready to roll with it, are excursions. Okay, I know that sounds fun, right? Because it is. So really looking at how do we enhance their project-based learning? What do we do to do that? We need to visit museums, right? We need to go to museums after hours and really talk to the curators and what is this all about? How do we learn about it? We need to go to state parks. That could mean an overnight camping trip. Okay, and how does that relate to some of the projects that they're doing? Government offices, when we're learning about government, all these different places that we need to go. Do we need to go rafting, mountain biking, skiing? What are different things that these kids can do? Because school is not just about your 4 core subjects. It's about truly learning how to interact with each other, how to communicate and how to interact with your community around you. Because a lot of times those trips you take, they learn so much more there than they ever would within our walls. So we're really looking forward now to having the opportunity to grow with that outside of our classrooms. So knowing that they all have unique needs, we will still meet those, and we'll make sure that we find out what they need and how to get that for them. All right, program relocation. So I said before, we've been very lucky that we've got to spread out, right? We've had lots of room. We've had a main gym, an aux gym, a fitness center, a football field, a track, a softball field. Those are all amazing classrooms that we have. So we will lose some of that, but we won't lose the curriculum and the programming that goes with it. We've been in limited space before. When I first started here, we had close to 800 kids, and the wing had been built on. Before that, before the wing was built, we had close to 800 or 900 kids without the wing. We had kids sharing lockers. We had, oh my gosh, I don't know how many kids in the classroom at a time. A lot, way too many. Okay, so we're not going back to that, but we've been in crowded hallways before, and we're going to do what we can to make sure that the hallways aren't crowded. Again, if we have, looking at schedule, do sixth graders have to be in the hallway at the same time as eighth graders? No, they don't. So let's look at what that might look like for them. So, special education. Lots of questions around special education. There's two of our BOCES programs, our Effective Needs Classroom and our SSN, our Severe Significant Needs Classrooms. Those classrooms are currently in the wing that we will no longer have. So we will need to move them. One thing I'm excited about with that is that they will be closer to the office. I won't get as many steps in during the day, but they'll be right there. So we can definitely be there with them. They'll be closer to the office, closer to the counseling center, things like that. We will need to do some construction to make sure that they have what they need. So our SSN program has the apartment where kids get to learn, meal planning, how to cook, different cleaning things like that. We will still have that. And now their classroom will be right across the hall from that. So they'll have the ability to still do that. But we will have to do some construction, and it will be a little bit more cramped, but they'll still have space. We'll build timeout rooms for them and all of that. Effective needs, we haven't decided where they're going yet because, again, this has still been kind of like are we doing this or not? And we're so busy right now, we're not going to put a ton of planning into things that we may not have to do. But if anybody knows me, I also always have about 12 plans in the back of my brain of things that we can't do. So we'll work with those students, those teachers, those families, and figure out where's the best place, what are your needs, and we'll build it out for them. We'll make it happen. So they will have that. PE will lose a space. This will be a hard hit for our PE teachers, but so proud of them because at first they were like, oh. Because again, they would do archery in the aux gym and be playing like pickleball or volleyball in the main gym. So it was nice to be able to spread out like that, but how many years did we run without an aux gym? Several years without that. So with the curtain in, they can still do, and we laugh about volleyball and archery, that would be kind of fun to see in the same room with middle school kids. Or not, I don't know. We have cameras in there, we could find out. So they can still do their programming. It may just look a little bit different. So it's not going to be like the best thing in the world, but it's still very doable. The kids will not miss out on any instruction or any of like the fun things that they get to do. It may just be chunked up a little bit more. Let's see here. Our restorative practices and counseling. Oh my goodness, we've been so lucky to have an entire section where restorative practices gets their very own room and counselors have their very own room to run groups and things like that. That is unheard of in most places. So we've utilized those spaces, but we've also done it where we haven't had those spaces. So they'll be okay. We talked about on the map some of the staff workrooms that we have currently. Those spaces can be utilized for that. They would no longer be staff workrooms because we're going to have new fancy digs in the main workroom. And So we'll find spaces for that. Plus, we also have pod areas. And did I mention outdoor classrooms when it's nice? Those are perfect places to do things like that. So, so we can find ways with that. Okay, STEM. We're so excited about this. So this is one of the things when we were like, okay, we could move STEM, which has like our P&N, so like our video production, our 3D printer stuff, our robotics, all of that kind of stuff. We're like, we could move them down to the activities hallway, and we had this big plan that we thought of. And after we presented to the staff, those teachers came up and said, what if we created like a STEM room and a STEAM thing and incorporated the arts? And we were like, tell us more. So they are definitely in the process of building this, and they're looking at using what right now houses some really old TVs. I don't know, we might be having an auction for that, if anybody would like a really old TV or some VCRs. If anybody's in the market for that. But changing that really into a STEM lab and a maker space. And I know some of you may think like I'm really high into tech. I am not. So I'm like, what's a maker space? And it's just that. It's the makerspace. It's like this really cool place where kids can come in and work on their projects and do video recording and 3D printing and all of that, and work to make some of their projects actually look professional and presentable that they can have. So I know that they're in the process of looking at some grants to help with that, but also just turning the space into where our library media specialists, our STEM teacher and our art teacher are all right there together to just really inspire and empower kids to dream big and just make some great things there. So it's like, I feel like we'll actually have a real STEM program or a STEAM program instead of just STEM classes. So super excited about that. And family and consumer science. If you're really old, you'll know this is home ec. But so we're very fortunate that we still have a family and consumer science class, and Mrs. Rucker, our teacher, is absolutely amazing, and she's been able to also incorporate some really DIY type projects to do some wood shop with it. I know we were just talking about how she teaches kids how to repair holes in sheetrock, which I said is great. Like my 23-year-old daughter needed to learn that because she somehow got a hole in her wall in her apartment. So, but also just how to use tools, how to fix things around the house, how to do that. So currently, we're sharing our woodshop space with Transition, with our recycling program. So the kids between 18 and 21 heading out, learning life skills, things like that. There's been a new space found for them, so we get to reclaim our woodshop. And what's beautiful about that is now that opens up Ms. Rucker's curriculum of what she can do. So before she had to be like, okay, I need to communicate with people, I need the room on these days, and if she was in the room, then they all had to go someplace else, so it had a huge impact. And now she can be like, I have this space, and we can go down there, and not only are we sewing fabric, but now we can also make frames, and we can put the fabric into the frames, and all of that. So she's pretty excited about having more space to work on things, and really utilizing that wood shop a lot more. So super excited about that. So it will be hard at first because it's different, and pretty much any time you do something different, it takes a while to get accustomed to it. But we're going to continue to dream big, and we're going to keep with our programming. So there won't be any programs cut. As a matter of fact, we're going to get to grow some of our programming. All right. Then we really boil down to philosophy. And our ROAR principles of respect, ownership, achievement, and relationships will hold true. Period. It's who we are, it's what we do. I don't care what space we're in. I don't care if it's cramped. I don't care if it's outside. I don't care if it's on a bus ride to a game. We follow our ROAR principles, and those will hold true no matter what. So know that those are definitely there. We will continue to mentor all of our students. Every student will still receive mentoring every week, every 2 weeks. They will get that time where they can set their learning goals, where they can talk to a mentor, where they build that relationship, where they figure out who am I, not just as a person, but also as a learner, and how do I grow. It's where we make our biggest connections, where we lean into that relationships, because bottom line, that's what is important in middle school. We're building those relationships, and we will continue to do that. Because without our relationships, it doesn't matter if I have the best, brightest, newest building in the world. Without those things, we're nothing. We'll continue to communicate with families. I know our staff sends out their newsletter, our teachers, our mentor teachers every week. I heard from the community that you guys didn't want to hear from me quite as much. So we cut back the ones coming from us, from Aaron and I, to really twice a month instead of every week as well. So when we looked at the statistics, you guys weren't reading ours anyway, you're just reading your teachers. We have a lot of good things to say, and we think we're pretty funny, but that's okay. We're not hurt by that. We didn't take it personally. So you'll still continue to get our communication. I'll still be out there every morning that I can be greeting kids. Miss Street will still be in here every morning that she can be greeting kids. Mr. McCary will be out there all the time greeting kids. Mr. DeSmith, we will be here. We'll be communicating with you. I can't tell you how many parents stop and block up the drop-off lane to run up and ask a question and run back in. Please still do that. It's okay. We're going to continue to communicate. Above all, this is so near and dear to my heart, we are going to foster kindness and acceptance in all of our kids and in our community, no matter what. Every day on the announcements, I end it with, hey, right now say something kind about yourself. Be kind to yourself, and then take that feeling and share it with the world. Be intentional with being kind and being accepting, and that will continue. Please know that even if we're sharing a building, Woodland Park Middle School students are my priority. Okay, that's why I'm here. I am principal of Woodland Park Middle School, and your kids will be my priority. Their academic growth, their social emotional growth, their weirdness, their laughter, everything. That is our priority. We'll continue to offer our full menu of athletics. We'll continue to offer jazz band. We'll continue to offer forensics and Odyssey and anything else that we can think of. And we know that we need to grow productive citizens, and in order for our kids to become productive community members, they need to build relationships with everybody around them, not just kids that go to their own school. They need to build those positive relationships with our whole community. This isn't a change in our philosophy. This is who we are. It's who we have been, and it's what I've had just the honor and privilege of continuing to grow. That's not going to change no matter where we are housed, no matter what we do. All right, we also need input though. So if we do end up sharing our space, I don't have all the answers. I know I sent out an email to our community right before spring break, and I'm like, I can't speak to what I don't know, which is a lot right now. Okay, because if this happens, we need input. I already have a team of teachers, a team of staff members that have said, hey, we're more than happy to be part of this. Sign me up. We want to talk to our kids because kids need a voice, right? They want a voice in what their space looks like, what they're doing, how they're doing things. So kids will be there, and then obviously parents and community members, all of our stakeholders. So be looking for information coming out. I'll work with teams we already have in place, our School Accountability Committee, and also our CAP group, our Caring and Active Parents, as a springboard for things, but then we also need more input. So there could be surveys coming out, different things like that. So please don't ignore every email from me. Okay, you may want to, if you want to give some feedback. And as always, if there's something that you really need to say to me, or really a question that you need to ask, or something you want to discuss, email or call me. I'll meet with you. Okay, it's so easy to be like, oh, the principal, the principal, the principal. Well, that's me. I'm Yvonne. I'm here. I'm a person. I will talk with you. I will hear you. I will listen. Doesn't mean I'll always do what you think I should do or the exact thing you want, but I will definitely hear what you have to say. And in the end, we will make decisions on what is best for our kids at the middle school, because that's what I do get to control. So big takeaway. We'll continue to love your kids. We'll continue to challenge your kids. We will inspire them, we will empower them. That's what our vision is. We've had that vision now for going on 10 years, and each year we look at it, and we're like, yeah, no, inspire learning and empower growth. That's who we are, that's what we do. That will continue, no matter what. And we'll love our kids, and we'll love every kid in this community, because we're educators. And you guys are great people. I mean, I had the privilege of growing up here. I love our community. Okay, and I'm going to take care of, when I'm here at school, Woodland Park Middle School first, but I'm not here 24/7. So I'm going to also reach out and work hard to take care of every student in our community, no matter if they're homeschooled, if they're visiting from somewhere, or if they're part of us. Okay, so please know, have faith that that part will hold true, even amidst some of the chaos that we'll be going through. So the beautiful part about middle school is we're kind of used to chaos. So, all right, now the nitty gritty. But Miles is funny, so it'll be fine.
I don't know. I had to follow Yvonne. Did I drew the short straw there? But sorry, you're stuck with me either way. So I'm Miles Tuttle. I'm the Director of Operations and Technology for the district. So you get to hear about that stuff. You'll probably notice that there's a lot of overlap with a lot of these things. So programming considerations, the site proposal, how middle school operates and will continue to operate, the finance side that Brian will talk about. There's a lot. Those don't live in these like distinct buckets. So you're going to hear some of the same things more than once in just in kind of a different light. But I'm going to be talking about these big things. So we're going to look at the feasibility study on the proposed sharing of spaces. We're going to also then take a bigger look at long-term facility master planning. I'm going to mention briefly a transition plan. We'll talk a little bit about facility usage after hours, so after school, on weekends, summers, and things like that. And then we'll talk a little bit about safety and security. Again, you're going to hear a couple of the same things twice, but just kind of in this lens instead. So in looking at a proposed co-location with Merritt Academy and Woodland Park Middle School, one thing that we've embarked on is a feasibility study with Cooperative Strategies. Cooperative Strategies is the firm that we're using for our long-term master planning as well. So they know the big picture. They're helping us look 10 years out at use of our 5 sites, and so they're very much capable of also looking at the feasibility of what you saw on that map and all the things that go with it. We're working on that plan with them right now, and we look at a lot of different things. We look at adequate space for programming, like all the programs that Yvonne and Tina talked about, and that there's adequate space for Merritt Academy's programming as well. We look at actual number of students, projected students, we look at all of those things, what spaces need to look like, what changes need to happen, and then from that we can look at capital improvements that we might need to have for this all to happen. And the goal is to have findings presented by April 13th on that feasibility study, and then we'll have a much better idea of some of the next steps as far as capital improvement projects. It's not just putting walls on one side of the school there. There are a lot of other things to consider. We'll look at signage. There'd be a possible like restroom reconfiguration. Tina had mentioned phones and intercom reconfiguration. There are improvements that we would incorporate, like this STEAM lab that's proposed. There's some special education programs that have some unique requirements, and so there would be capital improvements so that those could still be successful. We have things like one of the lounges has it's called an IDF. It's like one of those switch stacks for computers, and it's loud because it has a lot of fans in it, and it beeps sometimes, and so to be able to use that space and have it as like maybe a teacher work area. We might put a wall up there. The gym curtains, we could use the main gym and have 2 concurrent gym classes in it. And then when Brian gets up to speak, he'll talk a little bit about some proposed structures around costs for that, cost sharing and things like that. So that's short term. That's the feasibility study for this proposed shared space. And then we're also looking at, because we embarked on this in October, long-term facility master planning. So we're deep into long-term facility master planning in the meantime. That looks at 10-year phase planning for use of our sites. So working with cooperative strategies on that. And we have, it's called a steering committee. In fact, we met again last night. It's a group of, we have parents, teachers, administrators, community members. I'm on it. Brian's on it. Who am I forgetting? Board members. We have a high school student on it as well. And so that committee is helping to kind of draw the map of a 10-year plan looking at good use of facilities. But we also incorporate demographics, enrollment. We look at demographic projections. We look at everything we can so that we can utilize our facilities well over the next decade. And that includes maybe additions, improvements, maintenance, replacement of things. So we have things mapped out for 1 year, 2 years, 4 years, 5 years, 8 years, 10 years. We will reevaluate as we go. Since we're using the same firm for that feasibility study for this co-location proposal and our long-term master planning, we're working on kind of fitting all that together so we can make good choices in the short term and also make sure that the community and our students are served well in the long term. So we're also looking at a proposed transition plan with a co-location of the Woodland Park Middle School and Merritt Academy that would occur this summer. And so we're working on the details of what that would look like, but that's also a big project that we're looking at as far as like considering all the factors we need for that. When also looking at shared facilities with the Woodland Park Middle School, one thing we're having to consider is outside of school day facility use. So we have a pretty well-established facility use structure where we have growing programs in the middle school already, and there's already these facilities are already well used, and so we're working on a plan to allow for that for outside groups to use, for school groups to use it as well. We have existing partnerships right now with other community groups like the City of Woodland Park. There are a lot of activities where they use middle school facilities after school, on the weekends, over summer, on the summers. We have outside events that occur here as well, and so we're building that into our facility use agreement that we'll have, and we'll still work on coordinating all those rentals so that all of our site facilities are used well by the community. The last thing I'd like to talk about is access and safety and security. We noticed there are a lot of questions around that with shared facility. The nice thing is this isn't the only building in the state that has had this sort of agreement, and so we have some schools that we've been able to use as templates as we kind of look at what that looks like with a lot of details with separate entrances like Tina had mentioned. We're looking, it's pretty critical that we would likely have staggered start and end times, separate parking and separate flow lanes, and like you saw on that map, wouldn't have shared indoor space as well, and that would all be pretty clear. We have things like our HVAC systems are well equipped to take many more students. I mean, we've had 800 plus students before, and we have, and our air handlers and HVAC systems would be well equipped to take on all of that. And like Tina had mentioned, we have restricted key card entry, those fire and ALICE procedures. The ALICE procedures are those emergency procedures. Those will be coordinated between the two schools. And then of course, we anticipate some changes with traffic flow as well. This would increase traffic flow over recent years. It would be more in line with traffic flow levels that we have seen when the Woodland Park Middle School was at a higher capacity. But like I said, we'd propose some staggered start and end times so that we could allow for busing and flow lane pickup drop-off times to accommodate the increased traffic on site and the traffic impacts on our neighborhoods as well. So that's the exciting facilities stuff on all of this. Just know that there are a lot of things that are still in process that we're building, and there are a whole lot of things that we consider. And Brian, in just a moment, is going to talk about a lot of the financial considerations that go with a lot of these things, like capital improvements, that we would need for this all to be successful, and what things look like with utilities and some of the shared services and things like that. So I'm going to hand it off to Brian. Thanks.
All right, good evening. Thanks for being here. I'm Brian Gustafson, the Executive Director of Business Services here for the district. On top of that role, I'm also a basketball coach, and something that resonates with me through this process is I really appreciate the solution orientation of Yvonne and her team, Aaron, all of you teachers, middle school staff back in the back, of really looking positively at finding a solution to make this really work. As a basketball coach, I tend to lean a little more on the negative side of things sometimes. A book by a pretty famous coach that I've read is The Power of Negative Thinking by Bob Knight. And I have that in my library. So, I try not to lean there too much, but that kind of becomes my role on the business side of things too, is approaching solutions from kind of the obstacle perspective. So we can approach things from different ways, and ultimately, just like in a game, we're going to encounter things that they're going to come up, we're not going to know what to do with. And they're all going to happen at the same time, but we're going to get there, and we'll figure out a solution. And in August 16th, there are going to be anywhere from 500 to 700 kids walking in this building in 2 different schools. So we'll get there, and I say some of that because kind of my big answer to some of these is, I don't know right now. We'll talk about specific to the sharing agreement here. There's a lot of moving parts. Right now, there is a draft charter contract in process, being drafted, negotiated, worked on. That's to charter Merritt Academy into the school district. Simultaneously, as has been mentioned, there is a draft lease agreement to have Merritt Academy use this facility. Those are happening as we talk. And so it's hard to really get into the details, and it's hard for me to know where we're going to end up with some of those things right now. And I can project, and I'm guessing, and we're trying to kind of build the systems as those things are being worked out. And once we get those things worked out, we can implement our systems, and we can start plugging in numbers and figuring out, okay, now what's the solution to get there, to meet those numbers. Just a brief overview, and I think it's important to understand, even though this goes a little beyond the purview of sharing a facility, is just understand basics of how charter school funding is going to work here, right? This big proposal, it's all going to have a lot of mechanics in the background, and one of the things is we're going to have to figure out how the money comes in and how it goes out to Merritt Academy. And you have to understand that the state of Colorado assigns a per pupil rate. This is the dollars per pupil, and that's a very complicated process. And then you take that and you multiply it times the number of kids that you have in your school. Okay, that's going to happen for Merritt Academy as well as the existing 5-school Woodland Park School District. And all that money then will flow into the school district. So we talked earlier about 2 standalone schools, and that will be the case. But we also have this kind of overlap of processes, financial processes that will be somewhat standalone at times and somewhat commingled. My team will be responsible for doing the annual financial reporting for Merritt Academy, as well as Woodland Park School District. So one of the advantages that you'll hear about with chartering schools is the oversight that a district takes on. Right? So we'll get that oversight. We'll see what the dollars are. We'll see what the per pupil funding is. That funding will come into the district, and then what I'm working on, and our team is working on, is then how do we then assign costs to this particular project, as well as administrative costs, et cetera, before we flow that money out to Merritt Academy. Right, so it's all going to come into the district. We're going to work through a formula, a worksheet that we'll propose and we'll negotiate, and then we'll flow money out to Merritt, and Merritt will operate then. So it's kind of independent, together independent. That's how that's kind of the general overview of charter school funding. The financial obligations of the shared facility. So you heard about potential costs like crash doors, walls being added, the Raptor system, a curtain, sped construction. Again, I don't know. I don't know what those cost yet. As Miles talked about, there's a feasibility study being done, and that group will present its findings on April 13th. Okay? That's one of the reasons why we're doing that, is so they can help us assign costs and look at what are all those moving parts that need to be addressed for financial considerations. Okay, then we'll propose some sort of cost-sharing agreement that's proportionate, that's fair between the 2 schools to make sure those things can get done. And we look at those financial considerations. Basically right now we're looking at them in three buckets. What are the things that the tenant will be responsible for? So that's Merritt Academy. What are the things that will be cost shared, that in that formula before we flow the money to Merritt, there will be a buyback. So Merritt will buy back, we'll propose different items that Merritt will buy back then from the district will front some costs. And then what are the things that the district will be responsible for? All right, so those will be the financial obligations. Some examples. Proposed tenant obligations would be things like routine cleaning and custodial maintenance, kind of the day-to-day operations in that school. Right? We're going to have Woodland Park School District staff, there's going to be Merritt Academy staff, they're going to do their daily thing, right? We'll have to get down, probably into the weeds on a lot of things, like can you paint the walls, can you hang stuff on the walls? Of course you're going to be able to hang stuff on the walls, right? So who does that? Well, that's going to be the tenant that's going to do a lot of those things. But we'll have also a proposal of what are the things that we share costs of? What are the things that the district will itemize, right, and track that Merritt will then have to buy back in our formula? And those would include some of these renovation costs. When we're able to assign what those are, what they cost, we're going to have to work through, okay, who's responsible for what part of those things. As well as, and Miles mentioned this, utilities. Right? We're going to have to assign what's a proportionate level of utility payments for the gas, the water, trash service, all those kinds of things. Because obviously we're going to have more people in the building using more utilities in some regard. Right? So we can distribute some of those costs out. We're going to share those. Another one, and Miles mentioned this too, is capital replacement. Right? So what if an HVAC system over that, if you think back to the map that was up there, over part of that green shaded wing, what if that goes out? Who pays for that? We've got to work through that. Okay? And so again, with the assistance of a feasibility study, we're going to be looking at, is that a percentage? Is that based on number of pupils? Is it based on square footage? It could be and these are not the actual number. Okay, so it could be like 35%, 65%. So the HVAC unit's $100,000. We're going to have to figure out, right? Does Merritt take on 35%? Does the district take on 65%? That's all being built into this facility use agreement, right? Once we get those dialed in, they go in the formula and we start to work from there. And in consultation with other districts that have gone through these sort of similar changes and shared use agreements, hey, that's going to change. All right, we're going to get into it. We're going to be a few months down the line and go, this needs to be tweaked a little bit. This isn't quite working. This needs to be adjusted. And I'm hoping we're in a spot where we have a good enough relationship where we can do those things and we can adjust and make those changes. What are some of the things the district will be responsible for when we're talking about a shared facility? Things like health inspections, safety inspections. These are things that occur annually regardless of if there are 100 kids in this building or 900 kids in this building. Mowing the grass, shoveling snow, these kinds of things. And are we going to say, no, you absolutely cannot shovel the snow back to, no. But we're going to work through that there are some things that happen no matter what, that no matter who's in the building. Looking at the security and alarm systems, landscaping, the camera systems, those are probably going to be things that we propose that the district takes on the financial responsibility for that we already do. Now, there might be some of those things that as we get into talking about, we get the chance to think about a little bit more, that maybe we evaluate and go, oh, you know, maybe that should be a cost sharing or buyback situation. I'm not married to any one specific proposal right now, but we're gonna get there through this lease agreement process. Okay, so that's a little bit about the financial obligations. Yeah, you know, and kind of like Miles said, we're trying to address some of the questions that have come in through the points we're talking about. And I read this stuff, yeah, I think about it. I think about those things all the time. Knowing, trying to figure out how are we going to share these costs? How am I going to continue to make sure I represent the Woodland Park School District, you know, financial best interest? That's my job, right? And so yeah, we're thinking about that all the time, and we're looking out for that all the time. As far as contracted services, specifically those pertain mostly to transportation, bus service, food service. As Miles, Tina, and Yvonne all spoke about, we're going to have to probably propose some sort of a staggered start-finish time here. And that's going to impact transportation. It's going to really be up to Merritt on the pursuit of transportation services. Okay, can they reach out to Durham School Services and contract with them? Can they work with the district potentially to work out a deal with Durham School Services and maybe piggyback on some rates? Sure, but ultimately that'll be a decision that school will have to make on providing transportation. Okay, and then we'll figure out, you know, how can it work if it's different with those staggered start and end times. Food service, something similar. Right now, the district is in a process of, we're out to bid for basically the next 5 cycles of our food service contract. Okay? So right now, we don't know where our food service provider will be next year. Right? So we're in that process. The companies that want to engage in potentially pursuing that business with us, they'll be aware of the fact that we'll have a charter school in the fall that may or may not, I don't know, wish to engage in a contract with them as well. And again, that will be on Merritt Academy to decide whether or not they want to pursue some sort of agreement there. And we can help if necessary, or we can stay out of the way if necessary too. And we'll work through those things in our contracting process. And then insurance and liability. Again, this is going to be one of those situations in this facility where it's like, you're separate, but you're together. We insure the facility already. We work with the Colorado School District self-insurance pool, SIDSIP, to insure all of our property. And we pay our premiums, we establish deductibles, all those kinds of things on an annual basis on property that we have. And that's the buildings, the vehicles, all that kind of stuff. So this building is insured. Whatever agreements are finalized, we'll have to go to SIDSIP for their approval as well to make sure that the limits that Merritt is able to provide for their own personal property insurance are adequate, and to make sure that the limits that the district has on the buildings as they exist will ensure additional activities by a charter school. And we may have to modify things. And if we have to modify things, then we probably get into a cost-sharing buyback type situation with our liability and our property and all those kinds of insurance coverages that we have. And we have a lot of them. We've got pollution insurance and all kinds of things. So that's going to be another moving part of getting insurance to weigh in on things. The district will likely just cover the building, activities like that. Merritt will have to insure workers' compensation, staff benefits, and those kinds of things for its own staff members and employees. Okay. So those are sort of the high levels with regards to finance considerations. Again, a lot of moving parts right now that we're just waiting for details to start to matriculate and work through. Miles, did I miss anything there? All good? Okay. So, just taking on follow-up and next steps.
All right, great job, Brian. You guys did a good job here. Thank you. So lots of time and effort into thinking about this. To our executive team, very much appreciated. We're going to dive into questions and run quickly to the close of our meeting. We don't have a timeline in front of us, but you could wrap up your questions, then they can plan their responses, and I can plan our responses as well. And then I'll close with a few kind of future goal comments. I think we have quite a few questions, so if you don't have a question, you don't have to make one up. I promise. We do have enough here. Tina.
So we've tried to kind of collate the questions. So I'll start with one that was more about kind of the map where I started. It was just a question about how we divided classrooms, looking at the number of classrooms for each of the schools. It was like 21 versus 24 or something. When you look at those classrooms, you also have to take into effect that middle school still had a lot of the office spaces. So when you look at classrooms in the Merritt wing, some of the classrooms will be office spaces also. So we tried to look at, just programming. We also looked at kind of locations like where are restrooms and ensuring that there were 2 sets of restrooms. So when we looked at stuff, we were looking holistically at sometimes classrooms are offices, sometimes, just making sure there's restrooms. So we did try to make it so that the programming that we knew about from both schools was respected with room to grow in that proposal.
They're risking it giving me the mic back. All right, here we go. I love this question because it's totally me. Will staff quit? What's the overall word internally? Be honest. So I can honestly say I have not had a single staff member come to me saying that they will resign because of the facility use agreement. Not one. And staff is pretty open with me. Usually the last to know things, but I at least know them. So not one has talked to me about that. And I will say that right now, as we're looking at staffing with things, I've had fewer staff members this year talk to me about possibly leaving or submitting resignations than I've had in previous years. So our staff is looking very stable, honestly. Question around, thank you for this one because I did not bring up ELL. Do you have space for ELL at the middle school? So the answer is currently yes, we do. As far as what space will they be in next year, I don't know that yet. We do have a growing ELL population and we will work with the ELL department as well as with some parents and also like the teachers that are there who see them every day to see what the best space is for them. Currently we do, so what we currently have is basically 5 core teachers per grade level, which would be our 4 cores and then our Panther Time person, and in our new configuration we'll still have that. So there's another question about class size. It'll stay the same. It'll be the same as it was this year, obviously higher than it was last year because, COVID, and actually a little bit lower than it was the years before that. So we will have one extra room per se, per grade level, as well as some pretty large office spaces or what some of the staff workrooms were that we could turn into spaces like that for ELL. So I'm definitely hanging on to that one, thank you. Science labs, asking with all the science labs we're giving up, will we have enough and all that? Yes, we will have enough science labs in our area. Some of the science labs that we have now are being used for math classrooms, or one of them is the counseling center room that we have, so we will have enough science classrooms with all the equipment that we need for that. Let's see here. Some guarantees on student achievement in less space. So what I can guarantee you guys is I have complete faith in my staff. We have an amazing staff, and they will still have a classroom to themselves with the same number of kids in that classroom with all the supplies that they need to teach. So I can guarantee to you that my teachers will continue to teach, that they will continue to challenge kids in the classroom setting, no matter where we are. We will continue to do that. That part won't change. Once we always talk about our little bubble, and our little bubble is safe and it's happy and we're growing and we're good to each other and we make mistakes and we learn from that, that bubble will still be there. When those kids are in those classrooms, they will still have the great teachers, the great curriculum, the great resources that we've always had, and we'll have some additional spaces with being able to go outside and really develop that piece. Let's see here. Again, the space with the kids, as far as helping them grow individually, per grade level with all their uniqueness, those are things, we have the space to do it. I'm just gonna not make all those decisions all on my own, because better decisions are made when we work together. So once we know all of that is happening, we're gonna pull together our groups, we're gonna pull together our kids. I'm gonna pull together the 6th grade teachers who see 6th grade students all day long, every day, and be like, what do you guys need? What makes the most sense? And we'll go with there. What are we gaining out of it? An awesome STEM lab, right? And also our wood shop back, and then also really developing a lot of those outside areas, as well as having the ability now to continue to pursue what we were going at before with that community outreach and all of that. So I got that one. Okay, I think that's it. I'll hand the mic off to whoever's next.
All right, a few finance-related questions. These three are similar, so I'll read them and then address them together. How much are renovations going to cost? Who is paying for the renovations? How much are you planning to allocate from remodeling to fit the needs for the middle school? So, as I was just addressing, I don't know. I don't know how much the renovations are going to cost right now. And hopefully we get a little better idea as we go through the feasibility study and have a chance to know exactly what renovations need to be made. So that goes into then who's paying for them, and we're going to be working out a proposed cost-sharing agreement to pay for those renovations. Is it going to cost some money? It's going to cost some money. So we'll have to figure out how much, and then who's paying, and how are we planning to allocate for the remodeling. That now will have to be part of our annual budgeting process this spring. All right, so now, as a charter authorizer, well, we're not yet a charter authorizer, but a school that's going to be a new charter authorizer, my team and I have to learn, how do we budget for all of this? How do we budget for a charter school coming in? How are we going to then add that into our planning to allocate for these startup costs, like remodeling, if they're being assigned to the district? Or how are we going to share those costs or pass them on to the potential tenant? Then, a couple questions here. If Merritt's not paying rent, when, how can we afford excursions? And a good point here that I didn't address, I'm glad you brought it up, that statutorily we cannot charge a charter school rent to use the facility. Okay? But we will be proposing a significant flow-through process and formula that I talked about before of a cost share buyback type program. So the district is not going to be on the hook for all of the utilities, for the replacement of capital equipment. There's going to be a lot there that we're going to withhold up to, I don't know the number, but to a certain percentage of per pupil funding for those cost share buyback items. And I cannot answer the how can we afford excursions. That's going to be part of the building budget that we allocate to the middle school on an annual basis. So, and then this question, why are you approaching this that is okay for our kids to take a step backwards? Example, gym change, crowded hallways, we did this way before, and who's paying for the STEM lab? I'm just going to have to reiterate on who's paying for the STEM lab. I don't know. I don't even know what the STEM lab looks like yet. Square footage, drops, technology, I don't know those things yet. And then I can't answer the okayness for a step backwards, a gym change, crowded hallways, we did it this way before. We're going to have to adapt. And we're going to have to adapt and adjust in some regards, and Yvonne already addressed those items.
They're going to a new school.
We don't have to.
Just supposed to, that's what's going to happen. Yeah. Just adapt and leave.
All right, I got a lot, but I'm trying to group some of these together because there's some real similar questions. So if yours isn't addressed directly, my intention is to get some of these that are very similar together. There are a few questions on some of the specifics on like crash doors and curtains and things like that. It's like, well, you know, you have to make sure they're up to fire code, and we have to make sure if we put curtains up that it doesn't negatively affect like airflow and things like that. And those are some of the things that we're looking at with that feasibility study. It's like, yeah, if this is the question with the feasibility study, if this is the route we're going to take, what are the things that we need to consider? And are there going to need to be, you know, those crash doors and fire doors? Will there need to be something like that next to the auxiliary gym as well? So we look at all of those and make sure that we have everything in place. And to put everything in place, there are going to be capital improvements that need to be made. There's a question on here about paying for that and how will the district make this happen with bids, contracts, permits, things like that by fall of 2022. And that's a great question. It's a very tight timeline. And how extensive and expensive will this actually be? Brian mentioned this as well. It's like that's what we're in the process of figuring out. What is the extent of improvements that need to be made, and what is the cost of this, and how and why does Woodland Park School District intend to make all these changes by fall of 2022? And the answer is we've been tasked by the school board with this timeline, and so that's why we hit the ground running with the feasibility study so that we could try and capture all of those pieces. And there's some things we know, like we're going to need this, and this, and some things that we're learning, but we're asking a lot of these same questions as well. So that's kind of a big answer on a lot of those improvements that'll be happening. So I'm trying to organize cards in that way a little bit. A couple I'm going to hit in just a second. Somebody asked, what's another school district in Colorado that has a shared facility, and what's going to happen here? So Denver Public Schools has gone with a similar model with a number of their buildings, and so they actually almost have like two different types of leases. They have charter academy leases where it's just like one building, and then they have sort of a template that they've used for like co-location. It might be like certain floors are used by certain schools, and there's some particulars with co-location leases that we're looking at, because as you can tell, there are a lot of things that we have to consider with all of that. But Denver Public Schools is one of the big ones because they haven't just done this once, they've done it many, many times, as far as those co-located spaces. And as far, there's some questions on timing, and is this short-term, long-term? What does this look like in 2 years? What does this look like if either school grows or shrinks and kind of moves in either direction? Some of that is speculative, but a lot of that is built into our facilities master planning. So a really significant part of our facilities master planning are looking at demographic trends and looking at, I mean, we look at birth rates and move in and move out, and we look at students that come into the district or attend our schools, but they live in another district, and vice versa, students that live in Woodland Park School District boundaries and attend other schools, and we look at that over decades and anticipate trends, and we kind of have we'll have projections that'll look at, you know, high, medium, low, and then kind of like typical projections. And so we consider all of those things. We look at census data, look at it as many pieces as we can with that. And cooperative strategies, this is really all they do. They've in addition to some 200 facilities master plans that they've done. They've done something like 3,000 like enrollment demographic studies. So the data that we glean from them on that will really help us anticipate like what these sort of short and medium and long-term plans we should have, not just for the middle school and this co-location proposal, but what it should look like for all of our buildings. And then let's see, question about shared bus routes. And will Woodland Park Middle School and Merritt have separate buses for every route? Brian had mentioned kind of a big picture with this. As far as like contracted services, like food services, busing, any other services that they want to contract, it's really Merritt Academy's responsibility to procure those services, and they might look at Durham School Services. They might look somewhere else. They might have something else entirely in mind as far as transportation services. And so as far as Woodland Park School District, the current 5 schools, we have a contract with Durham Bus Services that we will still have moving forward. But I can't really speak to the plans that Merritt has as far as securing their own transportation. Let's see. And there's a question on sub-metering devices for allocating utility costs. That we haven't seen that in kind of usage in any other co-location agreements or anything like that. That's one of the things we're still building into cost sharing, buyback structures, as far as utilities. The goal is to have something that's equitable, that's fair, as far as cost sharing. But I think we've looked at sub-metering devices in particular. If Merritt School fails a health inspection, could that impact the Park Middle School operation? That's a tough one because that's speculative. It really depends on the specifics of Merritt Academy failing a health inspection. I mean, obviously the immediate plan would be to remediate anything that was an issue, but it's hard to answer that one without knowing, you know, what would actually happen in that situation. How long will the lease be for? I have a couple questions on the lease agreement. One is, can we see drafts of the lease agreement? One is, how long will the lease be for? We'll be having this conversation every year, every 3, every 5. We're really still working through always parts of the lease, like the term of the lease, things that would initiate closing of the lease, how you re-up the lease. So I'd say they're very drafty in form, and with a lot of those things, and there are a lot of things that we still need to work out as far as that goes. So we don't have a lease that we're working on some drafts of the lease, but we don't have anything that's ready for the public yet. Will marriage share a playground and track? That's one that's kind of a facility question, but also something we talked a little bit about as far as shared agreements between building leaders and programming that's happened. Do we want to speak to shared outdoor spaces right now? Because that's one that is tough. Yeah, that is kind of a tough one as far as figuring out, because that involves scheduling, that involves knowing exactly what programming will look like for both schools. There's some things to consider as far as a current playground. If Merritt were to install another playground structure, then we'd work out what that would look like. And then there's shared use of the track and field, which would involve, frankly, like a lot of coordination and a lot of planning and probably some set calendars in advance to make sure that both schools have appropriate use of outdoor facilities. That's a very different beast, I think, than indoor facilities. I think I looked out a lot of the big ones. There's some questions on what ifs as far as outgrowing space or needing more space with middle school or with Merritt Academy, and again, those are things we're relying on our long-term facility master planning for, as well as looking at feasibility study, which looks at current space, current utilization of space, proposed utilization of space, and kind of what capacity looks like. Even with Merritt Academy and the middle school co-located in this building, we expect this feasibility study to show that we are still well within what's called like functional capacity for the building. So that's like appropriate capacity for all the programming with some wiggle room and that allows for some growth as well. And again, that's exactly why we're conducting this feasibility study, to see like what can this site sustain and for how long, and what are kind of the limits as far as student enrollment in both schools for this middle school study. Those were all the big ones I could answer.
We're going to do a quick through. I have a few, Yvonne has a few, Brian has a few, and then we'll let Dr. Neal close us up here. Any of the questions that come in, Lindsay Prawl, our public information officer, will be putting some answers on our website through the FAQ. So a couple of quick ones for me is start and end times. We'll have to be looking at that. Woodland Park Middle School start and end times affect Woodland Park High School, Gateway, Columbine, and Summit, because all of those are tied together with our bus routes. So when we look at that, that will be a complex thing that we're needing to look at. Question about COVID, if COVID comes back with contact tracing and all that, I'm not going down that one if, yeah. So we would look separate facilities, so contact tracing would be obviously in each facility. So we would cross that road if it comes along. Then finally, I had one just about safety and security. We talked about that safety and security will have to be tied together between the two facilities because we're in the same building. Same thing happens with us with central office in the high school. So we will have to have coordination about safety and security. There was a question about the SRO. The middle school has an SRO on campus. So that ties to what Brian said about some contracted services. Do we look to make that part of, is that something that Merritt wants to talk to the district about? If we if we look at that, working through the district and the cost sharing with the district with a school resource officer on site. So those are things we're still working out through that process. So I'll give Yvonne a couple.
All right, does anybody else have any questions that you guys will have to answer? You do? Okay. All right. How will you communicate where teacher input has specifically been embedded within the plan? So that will be nearly impossible to effectively communicate because we have a very collaborative community environment with our staff. So what I can tell you is that if it's not collaborative, my staff will let you know. But all of our decisions that we make truly, there are very few, unless it's emergency situations, where it's a top-down decision. We collaborate as a staff. So for me to communicate out, this was my decision, this was Ms. Street's decision, this was a staff decision, would be impossible to do. And we will have parents and other community members invited to be part of that. So our decisions that come out are collaborative because it's who we are and it's what we do. How will you communicate how student voice is represented in the transition? That's a great question. Obviously with some parent approval, we can put out, hey, here's the kids that were on small groups, but then also we'll lean into our restorative practice training and we do circles with kids where we're like, hey, here's our question. We talked to them about trimesters this year for enrichments. Hey, what did you think about trimesters this year? And we go around in a circle and every student gets to have their voice as part of that. So just know that that's something that we do and we lean into. It's who we are, it's what we do. We can communicate that we have those. But with students that are on specific committees with parent permission, we can post who's on which committee and kind of what they're doing. I love this question. Will Merit have their own sports teams, or will they participate in Woodland Park Middle School activities? I don't know what sport teams Merit will have, but there is state law, statute, guidelines, all that around how we do that. So I'll tell you, this year we had Merit kids on some of our teams. So basically what it says is if they're at a school within our district and their school does not offer that sport, that they can participate in ours. So we have homeschool students, not this year, but previously we've had students from CSCS that have been part of our sports teams because that's what the law is, that's what we do. And the same would be reversed. If Merit had a sports team that we did not, our students could participate on their sports team. So that's not anything new, that's what we do, but that's a great question, and I love that because that means kids are involved in things.
All right. A question about the laws surrounding advertising underutilized space for charter schools. So in state statute, it's addressed that districts, charter school authorizers, of which we're not a charter school authorizer yet, must make available after November 1 of each year a list of their underused buildings in the district. And defined in that statute is an underused building has 250 or more spaces available for students. And we have, by that definition, we have 2 underused facilities. And one is the middle school and one is the high school. Right? And so after November 1 of each year, when we're a charter school authorizer, we have to make that available to any charter school applicant, or person who wants to see that list of spaces. So I hope that helps clarify the law on underutilized space, and for whatever reason the statute calls it underused space. Okay, and I apologize for using the lingo buyback. So a request to clarify what that means, okay, buyback. So we're talking about whether it's a tenant responsibility in finances, the district responsibility, or sort of a shared buyback responsibility. Think of a buyback as sort of a certain entity's portion. Okay, so the district is going to collect all of the revenue from the state of Colorado and then withhold merit portions for certain items. Those will be the buybacks. For example, my projection right now is that our per pupil funding next year will be about $9,600 a pupil. Okay? And then there will be what's called the negative factor, the state negative factor, and the merit portion, as I calculate it right now, very preliminarily, would be about $353. So I'm going to withhold that $353 of their per pupil rate for each pupil as a buyback before I forward on then $9,266. Okay, that won't be the only buyback that we propose. Okay, we'll propose buybacks for IT services or the utilities and things that we've mentioned. But I hope that helps clarify buyback a little bit. From my perspective, it'd be sort of a withholding of merit's share of certain expenses. Okay. And a couple questions that are similar, so I'll try and address them at the same time. Will all the costs of the changes to the building take away any chance of improving teacher salary? And a similar question, will cost of renovation have a negative effect on students, teachers, and the district as a whole? Where is the money coming from? So first, the question, will the cost of renovation have a negative effect on students, teachers, and the district as a whole? Well, the goal of any expenditure is to have a positive impact on the learning environment in the school district, right? So that would be the focus of any renovation hopefully those renovations are creating some sort of positive situation. As Yvonne mentioned, I think what will become now the famous STEM lab. Right? Hopefully that's a positive impact on the district and students and teachers. So it's really hard to answer, will they have a negative impact? The goal will be for those to be positive impacts. And then talking about where's the money going to come from for these renovations? And that's a really good question. And part of understanding how we fund teacher salaries and salary increases versus how we fund projects and one-time expenditures is important. Hey, we really work hard at funding any kind of ongoing costs, like paying people with recurring revenue. Okay, revenue that we expect to come each year. And that's usually in the big formula that I talked about, the number of kids times the dollars per kid. We consider that recurring money that's going to come from the state of Colorado annually. That's what we really lean on to fund compensation. Hey, when it comes to things like building a wall, right, we don't typically budget that from recurring funds. We typically budget that out of our reserves, okay, or a funding source that's designated as kind of a one-time only funding source. We don't like to use one-time only funding sources like certain grants to pay raises, because when that grant goes away, it's not recurring, then we don't have that source of money to continue paying for those raises that are ongoing. Right? So a thing like building a STEM lab or a wall or adding a curtain to the gym, those are going to come from reserves or one-time funding sources. Those will not impact the recurring funding that we hope is available for compensation changes of some sort. I hope I answered those for you. And again, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you about those things tonight.
Okay, wrapping up, the next, last 5 minutes. Great work, everyone at this table, and spending time thinking about kind of what's in front of us. There was one of the questions that came forth was, when we did this with the preschool last year, why was this community communication process not done? I wasn't here. All of the staff at this table have more than 20 years in education. Really smart people. And I think there are times when we don't see the right pathway or the best pathway. We kind of learned through that process. We probably should have done this about a month ago with this group of people. Again, I owned that in the first part of the meeting. I think we're getting better at having these conversations. Some of the comments online that I've heard, even in response to this meeting, is this deteriorating the middle school? Actually, we're getting a chance to reinvest in several resources like our STEM lab, like our wood shops. We're revisioning, or we're rethinking about what are we doing. I looked at Yvonne and said, is this deteriorating what we do in the very first day when we had this conversation? It's not. So the comments about Is my child going to receive less of an education next year because we're in a shared facility? No. In fact, with the resources that are being put into the STEM lab and other, the wood shop and other facilities improvements, it's going to be a better facility than what it is this year. Sure, we probably could have done this project for Gateway last year, but my commitment is to continue to work on our transparency as a district. So if we do these type projects, that the community would be part of that. That is in fact what the Facility Master Plan project is all about. That has meant all year this year to come up with a 10-year plan for all of our facilities. And that project has never been done in the Woodland Park School District. So hopefully our commitment to growing, and we make mistakes. Miles asked me a question, we were talking about, is this going to cost more than the boxes that I had in one of my emails? And I wasn't thinking when I sent that email, yes, it is going to cost more than the boxes. In my mind, I was thinking about teachers moving, not about facilities improvement. And you know, we make mistakes, and we kind of try to clarify that. One of my biggest concerns about sharing this space with another school, and the last question is, does this sharing space meet or exceed the vision and the mission of our district? All of these students are our students in the district, in Teller County. And just me personally, I would rather see a student learning in an educational environment that is made for kids to learn, that is safe and secure and has controlled access, personally, than being in a hardware store. Now the timing is fast, and we get that, and we're looking at trying to figure this out, but this space was made for kids to learn in. And if we're able to do this without reducing the academic offering of our current middle school, then that is a benefit to kids across Teller County. It's not my job to run merit. It's not my job. It's not our school board's job to run merit. They have their own school board. They have their own decision process, and they have their own financials. It's our job, though, to reach out across. Yvonne alluded to this, making sure that our kids across Teller County are well connected. One of my biggest concerns is that we would, as adults, get it wrong. So we've thought about this and different ways to do this, and we're just trying to do our best. And I wanted to say thank you to our staff, to our teachers for spending their full day teaching today and then coming in tonight and being a part of this and helping us envision. We're not going to get all the answers done tonight. We're going to think of new things in the next 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years. When I've had shared facilities in my previous life, we kind of came back after a year and said, well, didn't really get that right. Let's figure out how to fix that area. And that's a work in progress. Over the next few weeks, we anticipate a district and a merit agreement on a charter contract conditions. Those are with attorneys right now. Currently looking at a special education component tomorrow afternoon at 3:30 in just kind of an attorney conversation, actually. Completion of the feasibility study in the next few weeks. April what? April 13th will be the conclusion of the looking at this facility to see if the professionals say that that map makes sense. District and Merit agreed to a facilities usage agreement. Merit had emailed at the weekend to see if we have our draft ready. I emailed the attorney and asked if the draft could be ready following tonight's meeting. I think we're probably pretty close on a draft coming from our attorney and being sent over to Merit. District Facility Master Planning Committee meeting is the next presentation is April 12th for all community stakeholders. And again, that's a 10-year facility master plan for all buildings in the district. And then a stakeholder survey will also be a part of that. And so beyond the Merit Woodland Park Middle School discussion, that's all of our schools coming out. So we good? Thank you everyone for your time, and please drive safely home. Have a great night. Please give a hand.